We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are talking about The Little Mermaid, the live-action remake by Disney. It came out this week, and we went to the drive-in, which is going to be kind of an important piece here for a couple of things we're going to talk about. I think the best way to structure this video is more or less talking about some of the differences that is in this movie as opposed to the original, because if you're watching this, you've probably already seen the original,
and if you haven't, go watch it.
Yeah, you should see the original at least before you hear our talking points, because then you know where the connections are coming from. So yeah, we'll talk about some of the differences and then obviously give our thoughts along the way, and then it's up to you whether you want to watch it. So where to start? Maybe we'll start with why I pointed out that it was important that we were at the drive-in, and that is because, when you're at the drive-in, you're at the mercy of your surroundings, and so it was, after dark, and there's a lot of times where we were watching this film and we were thinking like we can't see anything on the screen, and we had wondered, is it because it's not dark enough yet, or is it the movie? And so what we did is we looked around and we could see all the other screens, and I kid you not, all the other screens looked fine. So I think one of the big things that's disappointing for this film is that it is very dark in terms of visual. Like when they have, I don't know if you want to call it the main area that Ariel swims around in, like when random things are happening, like not the shipwreck, not Ursula's area, not King Triton's castle area, not that stuff, but just swimming around in the normal water. That has very vibrant colors, and it is what I would hope the whole movie would be. But when you get to all those locations that I mentioned, the brightness and the color scheme drops dramatically. And I understand, some of those places, light wouldn't necessarily like penetrate down into those areas as well. But, if we're gonna,
When it's so dark that you can't even see that the dog is on screen, but you hear them say Max and you know that that's the dog, that's too dark.
well, so I guess where I was kind of going with that is there's a couple of things in this movie where they try to make it more realistic because it's, a live action, and, they want to put the movie in terms of, this is real because we're using real people. But there's certain things along the way that don't match with that same motive. The lighting being one of them, like maybe they're trying to say, this actually would be very dark underwater, so we want this scene to be dark. Maybe that's where they're going with it. But, and also another one that is huge, and again, we can talk about spoilers because we put it in the video description. When they go to perform under the sea, in the original film, all the different sea creatures have instruments that they're playing along to. But here, there's no instruments. It's just they're singing as they dance through the water.
You can hear the instruments, but you don't see any creatures playing them.
Right. So,
like, it's not a cappella, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So I feel like with that, they were trying to make the movie more realistic. Like, these fishes don't use instruments. But what's interesting is, some of the things that they were using in the animated show were like, banging on clamshells, or I forget most of them. I remember that one, but
The
There's
biggest thing I
another.
remember is a saxophone.
The thing is like when I saw that, I thought, okay, maybe they're going that direction, kind of like with the lighting. But then we get to the Kiss the Girl scene where we get that music number, and they give a reason for every instrument to be playing. Like they make the trees move bang against each other to make a beat, and there's like flies out there that are making their wings flap to make certain notes and stuff. And so they gave substance to that music, which made me wonder, like, in the animated show, do you remember? Did they have instruments for that song too?
Not that I recall.
Because I didn't think they did, but it's weird that they almost are putting instruments in for that song and not the one that did have instruments. So it's a weird feeling. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't think it's something to knock it for, like if that makes sense.
Just a different take, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to list one of your differences or opinions?
Yeah, so I was just looking at when you were trying to go over the darkness and stuff. I was going over some run times and trying to see with the other movies that Disney has gone from cartoon to live action, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, how much extra runtime did they add to those films compared to how much extra runtime did they add to this one? And so this from those ones, I just listed off three. So this is the fourth one, at least that I can recall as far as major movies. Maybe there's others that I don't really know about. But anyway, two of them they added about a half hour each, and then two of them they added almost an hour each. And the hour ones being Beauty and the Beast, they added nearly an hour to that. And then The Little Mermaid, this one, they added nearly an hour to that one. So when you have that much extra runtime, there's going to be a lot of other things that you have to, investigate or explore to fill that time, right? And so one of the things
I was
that
gonna
they
say, and also with this film, they actually cut some stuff from the original film, so they had even more time that they had to fill in with their extra stuff. Because I don't know if you noticed, but the whole like Sebastian in the kitchen scene where he's running away from that chef dude.
I did not realize that was missing, but yeah.
Yeah, because like Sebastian sees like how the dude is cooking fish and whatnot, and so it's like, oh my God, humans are bad, kind of a thing. In the cartoon version, that's completely gone in this movie.
Yeah. But one of the big things that they focus on or give more substance to is Eric's backstory. So, they've got him out on his voyage before he meets Ariel. They've got, bits and pieces of him talking to his mom or step mom, maybe, because it sounds like he was an orphan that kind of like washed ashore, and so he became a prince just by the king and queen taking him in. But I mean, even that information is something that's new that I don't remember being part of the story before. We knew he was Prince Eric, but there was no more substance to him other than that's just what he was. So, they've got scenes with him back at the castle and trying to figure out who this girl is without knowing that it's Ariel. And, you know, I feel like they flesh out the story a bit more with when Ariel gets her legs and spending a lot of time on those two characters when she can't talk. I know they had that before, but I feel like they really lengthened their journey and their day. That they basically have like a date day where they go out and do all this kinds of stuff and going to a market and dancing and all kinds of stuff. So that added a lot of length to the movie, not necessarily in a bad way. I think it was interesting. Their chemistry between the two characters was all right. I didn't really see anything major missing there.
I honestly think that was one of my favorite scenes was them like going through the market and her exploring what it was like to be a human.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's one of the well, both it being new, it's probably my favorite new thing, but also it's probably one of my favorite things in the film.
It was one of the things I could actually see.
Yeah, because it was really cool. Uh, Also, when we're kind of learning about Eric, one of the things I thought was a little weird that they tried to, I don't know if they're doing this to be somewhat poetic in this movie or if they're doing this to show that Ariel and Eric are more meant for each other, but they both got daddy issues. So Ariel is having the issue with her dad because he doesn't want her to, be messing with humans or going up to the land. And Eric is having an issue with his dad because his dad wants Eric to grow up and, basically follow in his father's footsteps and not be an embarrassment to his dad out in public, whereas Eric wants to be more himself and not have to go down this pathway that's already been paved for him, so to speak. So it's kind of weird that they basically gave them the same issue with their dads.
Well, they mentioned Eric's dad, but I don't think we ever actually saw him. We just saw the mom.
Yeah, I don't, I, because, yeah, the dude that we do see that's kind of overseeing Eric, he keeps calling him like sir and stuff. And I don't think your dad would be doing that.
Yeah, that's definitely not his dad. It's more like the family servant slash family right hand man slash secretary, I guess. He kind of is in control of the castle, not from a ruling standpoint, but just from a making sure everything runs smoothly in the castle itself.
Yeah, I
Like
don't know
a
what you'd call that, but yeah, that's a good,
caretaker, maybe.
yeah. Let's see, what else was, oh, there, one difference that I think absolutely should have been left on the cutting room floor is there is a scene where so Ariel has already given up her voice and she's with been living with Eric and um Ursula has already turned into uh Vanessa, I believe, right? And so Scuttle, who is played by Aquafina, Scuttle sees the whole thing with like Ursula seeing herself in the mirror, just like the animated show, and it actually shows that that's Ursula. And when Scuttle goes to tell Ariel about Ursula, she has a musical number, which does not seem to fit in this film at all. Like it I don't know much about Aquafina, but I think she's a music artist and I think they tried to put her style of music into the film because it was more like hip hop slash rap type music and I really don't think that fit well. I think I was trying to think about, where is this movie going to go right after this scene? Is this something that you're laughing? What happened?
So I Googled Aquafina to see uh more what her background is, and you're right. So she's an actress, a rapper, and a comedian, right? But she first became popular in 2012 when her rap song, which name is so inappropriate, I'm not going to say on the channel, became popular on YouTube. So
Hmm.
she became famous from rapping.
Okay. So yeah, she probably had a big influence on her number in the movie. And if you see this movie, my guess is you'll have the same feeling is because, you're hearing all the ones that you recognize, of course. There are some other new ones along the way, which we haven't mentioned yet. This one is one that should not have made it into the film. Because right after this scene, you could have totally went from the one before this one to that. Like you could have even had Scuttle tell Ariel about Ursula, and then Ariel takes off just like she does at the end of this song. Basically, this is a song where she annoys Ariel so much that Ariel decides to get out of bed and go away from her. That's my opinion. Probably
Yeah.
isn't what it actually is, but that's what I
Well,
would.
they showed Ariel trying to cover her ears with a pillow because she was annoyed by the singing.
Well, if I had a pillow, I'd probably do the same thing. Um, so yeah, there's that. That's a new song. Eric has his own song. Like they since they're focusing so much on Eric, they actually give him a musical number.
It's short, but
It's
it's all
short.
right.
It's okay.
Kind of awkward.
Yeah. It really wasn't for me, but again, it's not one of those things where I would like think less of the movie. You know, obviously, with them having a bigger runtime, like we said, they're trying to add some more substance to the film. And, this is one way of doing it. Maybe people want to know more about Eric. I really don't think we needed it, but I guess it's kind of nice that we have it. Maybe.
In some ways, you can't just do a direct copy of the old film because then you're going to critique every single little thing that's not exactly the same, and you're just going to think it's boring and not worth it. So they kind of have to add things that are different to differentiate the films, to add a little bit more of interest level, I guess.
I will say Lion King begs to differ because they did basically shot for shot and made over $1 billion. So
They somehow added a half hour of content in there.
really? Well, I mean, I can think of a couple of things.
Something like that, a half hour ish, yeah. But while we're talking about musical numbers, one of the things that I want to touch on is Ariel's voice. So this is something that from, like the previews for the movie, it sounded really good. And I'm not saying she has a bad voice. She does sound all right, but much like some of the other films recently in today's age, it just seems to be missing the heart. I I feel like there was some musical numbers she did all right at, and some of them that just sounded kind of at least awkward or like uh there's when she's talking about her treasures that she finds, she kind of goes back and forth between singing and talking. And what do you call them? Feet? Like that's one of the lines where she's kind of talking instead of singing. And so like it didn't have the same heart in it, in my opinion. I don't know.
So I guess I'm not saying I'm a know-it-all, but what I will say is that I come from a music background. Sarah doesn't, so I'm going to try to maybe explain where maybe some of this is going on. Because there's some things that I noticed too, that really bugged me, and I'll try to explain that here. Because I will say that scene that you're talking about in particular, I believe that happened in the animated version as well, where she kind of went back and forth in that scene specifically.
I'm not saying that that was bad. I'm saying that her rendition of it was awkward.
So what I'll say to that, and I'll even go right for the money shot, basically. The one behind me that I chose this for a reason. One, that's an iconic moment in the original Little Mermaid movie. Um, I will say the part of your world song is one where if I hear that thing banging at Disney World, I am like, this is home kind of a thing. Because we want to be a part of their world, and it hits really hard. So it's a song that I think is super recognizable, and when done right, it's amazing. One of the things that makes the original so good, in my opinion, is when we see this iconic moment in the original, they have Ariel almost rush towards the screen. There's a huge wave that crashes behind her, and there's cymbals that crash during the music number that just between all three of those things together, it really almost makes like a rush of goosebumps go over you, especially if you love that music. The problem that I had with the live action version, and this is going almost for all the music in the live action version, and it's not just the Little Mermaid. It is I can speak volumes to the Lion King had this issue big time as well. Trying to think of the Beauty and the Beast a little bit. not as much. I, I am a little biased towards Beauty and the Beast, but I am willing to admit that there was some musical things going on there that I didn't also agree with. But the problem is that these live action ones do not go for it. They basically do just enough for you to recognize what's going on, and then I almost feel like that they want you to put the puzzle pieces together and be like, "Oh yes, this is amazing because I remember this from something before." And when we get to this scene in The Little Mermaid, there's like very little music that is emphasizing the wave crash. Her singing is phenomenal. The wave is an embarrassment. The wave looks like someone's like, "Yo, Jim, I need you to splash back there. I need you to splash." And instead, they really should have had like the moon going over the thing, pulling a wave to crash into her, kind of a thing. Because it literally looks like someone kicking a splash. It does not look like that big iconic splash from the original. And I think that would help in things like this. Disney music is emotional. And I say that in the sense of, like I said, when you hear it, you get all the feels depending on how you relate to the movies, the music, and whatnot. And I feel like this movie, just like the other ones I mentioned, they they relied on the fact that this song, and then they for some reason pull back a little bit. It was this song, it was Under the Sea. That was another one that seemed to pull back a little bit. Um, that's probably my second biggest criticism of the movie is that I love the music, but again, they're holding back, and I wish they would just go for it and let the audience have it because that's what they want.
I think Poor Unfortunate Souls had that issue too.
It was I don't mean to sound like I'm like bagging on this movie so much. I did not even recognize her song, Ursula's song, because it seems so different. I don't know if you got that same vibe, but like she
Well, I
sings.
picked up that it was different. I thought it was okay, but it didn't have as much of a punch as what a normal villain song does.
Did she sing two separate songs, or was that the same song just kind of broken up into two segments?
I think it was the same one, just broken up.
Okay, because maybe that
She,
was.
she was essentially singing Poor Unfortunate Souls in reference to other people or mermaids or whoever that she's helped. And then Ariel's like, I don't know, maybe I should leave. And she's like, fine, then leave. And then she basically reels her back in. And then she goes back into the Poor Unfortunate Souls, but referring to Ariel this time.
Yeah. Aside from the music, another thing that I wish they would have done that maybe could have been an improvement for the live action film, I felt that as far as like so we see King Triton and his family throughout most of the film. Like, we see King Triton, we see his daughters, and we see Ariel. Those are pretty much the only mermaids we see, maybe one or two others. Okay. It makes their world seem so empty because I was starting to wonder how I asked Sarah while we were watching the movie, I was like, did you see any like mermans at all yet? And I asked her that because I'm like, well, no wonder she wants to leave this place. If she likes boys, she has to go to the land because there's none here except for Daddy. So, but at the end of the movie, when they're having like this touching moment of Ariel, now has her feet and she's going to stay with Eric and they're going to go off and explore the world. We see all these different people that were from I'm assuming either around the world or part of Atlantica. So
All the different mermaids, you mean?
yeah, like where were these people this whole time? Kind of a thing. It would have made the world feel more flushed out to see all of that earlier on as opposed to waiting until the end.
Yeah.
It could be just me, but I feel like uh with what they were doing, uh they definitely could have had more going on. They played it safe with how much CGI they had to be aware of.
I feel like that's something that's just how it was in the original, so that's what they stuck with. But that is an opportunity where they could have put more into it and they chose not to.
Right, that's what I was saying. Like this is something with live action they could have built upon because we knew it was there because we saw it at the end. So why just save it for the last minute when you could have made it like a living, breathing area um, of a whole bunch of mermaids?
Yeah. One of the areas that I'd like to talk about is Ursula and her eels. So that's who I chose for my background. This is something that we were kind of worried about being Melissa McCarthy. She's somebody who I used to like a lot of her stuff, and then she kind of got a little overrated, and her film quality seemed to go down for a while, where she was pumping out so many movies that they just weren't as good as what her old ones used to be. So I was kind of nervous about how she was going to be able to handle this type of a role, especially because we're used to seeing her in comedies, and this is definitely not a comedic role. But overall, I think she actually did pretty good. What?
I was thinking to myself, I think she's kind of comedic, like Ursula, like she's so evil, she's funny, kind of a thing.
I
I mean,
suppose.
she has an iconic laugh. She's having a great time.
This this is true. Yeah. But yeah, so I think she did a pretty good job. I was pretty well pleased with her performance. They in terms of her character, one of the changes that they did is that she has a lot more control over her tentacles, and I think it's kind of cool to see her use them. Like, for example, when she was talking about Ariel being in love, she used her tentacles to like make a heart. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, and that just a neat little change, I suppose. Her eels, though, they did them dirty. They had no personality. They were so dark you couldn't even see them at all in hardly any of the shots. There was even a time where she got upset because when she had King Triton's Triton and she was trying to shoot at Eric so that Ariel would be unhappy and stuff, and she uh, got bumped or something, somehow missed and hit one of her eels. You couldn't
Aerial hitter.
Okay. You couldn't even see that she hit the eel. You just saw that she was upset and said she hit the eel. But it was so dark you couldn't see it. I remember these guys, hissing and, having the little electricity and stuff, and they were creepy. And this was just so dark. They changed it from hissing to growling, which just made it weird because they're supposed to be like kind of like, well, eels are kind of like snakes, so you would expect it to hiss, not growl. So I don't know. Ursula, yes. Eels, no. They did bad.
I will expand on that too. No disrespect to the actress. I just never was and never have been a fan of Melissa McCarthy's. It's just her type of comedy doesn't resonate with me. But I will agree with Sarah. I thought she did a great job with Ursula. Um, I feel like she, you know, analyzed the character from the original and portrayed her on the screen just the way she was supposed to. So I do think she did a good job here. She didn't have, I guess, one of the reasons why she doesn't resonate with me is I think, like Sarah was saying, as she had to pump out more and more films, a lot of her comedy, in my opinion, became forced. And I think because Ursula is such a strong character, no matter who's playing her, she didn't have to force anything. She just had to be. So I think that helped out a lot.
It's funny you say that because that's exactly how I feel about Aquafina. I do not like her.
For Scuttle.
Well,
Oh,
I don't like her character. I don't like her comedic type in general. Like the movies that she's in and stuff. I'm just not a fan.
do you want to talk about the little thing that really, aside from the music number, the other thing that really bugged us about Scuttle?
If you're referring to the fact that this bird goes under the water and somehow is able to not only swim but also breathe and talk under the water, yeah, that was messed up.
I'm gonna look up to see how long seagulls, because that's what Scuttle is, right?
Scuttle's supposed to be a seagull, yes. I don't think this bird was a seagull. It didn't look like one.
How
But while you're
long
looking that
can
up, some of the
seagulls
other kind of weird things along those same lines that I thought were really weird, and I don't know how this passed the editing phase was uh when they were doing the Under the Sea song, Ariel was playing with jellyfish and somehow not getting stung, even though she was straight up pushing up on their tentacles or little feelers where normally you would get stung. And I don't know if she's just like immune to their stinging, but like it's to the point where in Finding Nemo, the fish can get stung. So why would Ariel not be able to get stung? That doesn't make any sense.
So I looked it up. Seagulls can stay underwater for 3 to 10 minutes, but
That's
they
that's
cannot talk underwater.
I have a feeling they also can't swim underwater and they're probably just floating on the surface with their head in the water trying to get bugs and fish and stuff.
It says they dive underwater.
That's
Oh.
weird.
Yeah, I guess maybe they were somewhat teaching us something about seagulls with that scene, but it just did not seem right. Which can lead us to another thing that was kind of bothering us about this film. And that is when we're underwater, which is a very, very important aspect of this movie because we spend a lot of time under the water. Um, it it seems like very, very bad CGI coming off of seeing something like Avatar 2. So like Avatar 2, the underwater stuff was phenomenal. I mean, that movie is known for its amazing digital effects. Here, it like Sarah, I think Sarah said during the movie, you can hardly tell they're even underwater most of the time. Like the reason why you know they're under the water is because their hair is doing funny things, and that's about it. Um, or if they're trying to, run away because they have to swim. Um, it just looks like an open. It's like watching SpongeBob. How like you can just see the background and there's really no rhyme or reason to know that you're underwater except for the fact that you know that they're underwater, if that makes sense.
True. Yeah.
Whereas in Avatar, I felt like I knew they were underwater because they are showing me they are underwater, not because I have to assume like, oh, this is just what it looks like underwater.
How did you feel about King Triton's character?
Um, I thought it was all right. I mean, I don't really have anything negative much to say about him. So one of the things in the original, I feel like in the original, King Triton is more of using his dad voice type character, if that makes sense. He's more bellowing and "Ugh," kind of a thing. And in this one, he seems more mellowed out, almost like he uh, is just speaking the lines and not acting like that, dad voice that he needs to maybe try to get his point across to Ariel. Of course, he still does the same thing like he does in the original, where he destroys all of her stuff. Um, but as far as trying to get in there and, like I said, use his dad voice, I think that's fairly absent compared to the original.
One of the things, and this is more minor, but one of the things that really bugged me towards the end of the film, when he's finally talking to Sebastian about how much he's going to miss Ariel because he's letting her go and giving her her permanent legs and whatnot, his mouth isn't even really moving. It's almost like he's mumbling it to himself, but he's talking to Sebastian, so I don't know. It just seems weird. I don't
I remember you
Seems strange.
saying I remember you saying that when we were in the car because we sit in the car when we watched the movie at the drive-in. And I saw his lips moving, but I feel like he had so much facial hair, it was hard to see his lips moving.
But then there's other parts of the movie where you can see him talking, and then you could see it just fine, like his mouth was moving like a normal person or normal merman, if you will. It just seemed
I don't
weird.
know. Um,
Um,
Go ahead. I wonder if the next thing is what I was gonna say.
well, it's not about him, but
No.
it is about Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
So when she when she loses her voice,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where you're going, I take
Yeah,
it.
I think
Yeah.
so.
So she gives her voice up to Ursula, just like in the normal cartoon.
Can we emphasize this is a new thing?
Yes.
This is a new thing that is not in the original.
Yes. So she gives her voice to Ursula, just like in the cartoon. But then when she is found by Eric, well, she's found in a different way. She's like caught in some fisherman's net who brings her to the prince to like help her because I guess the royal family is just gonna help this poor random girl that was just found essentially naked in the
I
sea.
I found that kind of odd. Like,
I don't know that that's really how that would play out in real life, but that's what they did.
I'm sure the dude would be like worried about her, but taking somebody to like the king or queen, prince, whoever that's in charge of the island, that's kind of surprising to me. I don't know why, but
I
I just
thought
I
that
don't
too.
I didn't see that as being the go-to, but
Yeah,
maybe times were different.
could be. I'm not sure. It seemed odd too. But anyway, so she doesn't have her voice, and the king, not king, because I don't think we ever see the king, but like Prince Eric and his mom, have their servants take care of her and bathe her and stuff. But the new thing for me that's really strange here is she doesn't have her voice, right? She starts singing. Like, you don't see her mouth moving, but instead of having like a background song, like a normal movie, you hear her singing, but her mouth still isn't moving. So it's kind of like when you talk to yourself, except she's singing. And a lot of times in shows and stuff, when they have a character talk to themselves, the voice sounds different just a little bit because it's like more muted or maybe kind of like whispering to yourself or just it just sounds a little bit different to emphasize that nobody else can hear this besides the character that's talking. This sounded totally the same. It was as if she was singing with her mouth closed, and it was really weird. I was not a fan.
I thought it was a little odd and somewhat unnecessary. I think what they were going for was, and really, I've learned a lot of this from the interviews with Kathleen Kennedy about Star Wars and how they think about it. And that is, they're probably thinking, okay, we have to add an hour to this film. That way, people come to see not only the original, but extra stuff. Um, what is Ariel thinking when she's at this place? In the original, she doesn't talk. And so we really don't get to understand where she's at mentally, where she's at emotionally. And my guess is that this is how they were trying to convey that stuff.
Personally, I totally get that in a way. In a, I understand wanting to know those things, but having her sing it instead of just talking, I think was really out of place and a misstep.
I could see that. Like I said, I thought it felt awkward too. I just, I know what, I feel like I know what they were trying to do, and I guess I can respect it. It's just an artistic choice, but I guess if it were me making the film, no, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Not that way. I
Right.
because even during some of those segments, it flips and it's basically us in her mind, quote unquote, and now her lips are matching the music because you can kind of tell it's in her mind because a lot of the surrounding area turns dark, like black, and then it's just her and the like one or two other people that are around her, but she's like singing around them with her mouth moving. So those are the scenes where you can kind of feel like you're in her mind, but yeah, it's kind of a um weird way to do it. One thing that I will say, because I feel like we're saying a lot of things that are changes and we don't like. Another thing I'll add in here that I did think was interesting was that when Ariel has, her legs and she's with Eric and all of them, uh, there's a part where she starts to become a little nosy and she's poking around the building
Mm.
and she goes into Eric's little area, like his,
Like his treasure room.
yeah, the way that they filmed the scene reminded me a lot of the way that they filmed when we enter Ariel's grotto and we see all her trinkets, and then the way that they showed her in his little area was almost like the same shot, where they look at a few things and then look up towards where the light is coming through. And so I thought that was kind of a cool parallel between the two characters where they're trying to, you know, show similarities between the two. Um,
Their chemistry was pretty good in that scene too, I think.
yeah,
He
I
was concerned that she was breaking his trinkets, but really what she was doing was showing him like secrets to the trinkets that he didn't know about, like this weird crystal that if you smashed it or it looked more like coral, but when you
yeah,
smashed it, there was a crystal inside, and he didn't know
yeah,
that there was a crystal inside. So that was kind of a neat back and forth between the two, even though she couldn't talk.
I did like that. I like that for a new thing in this movie. Um, her showing him the things that she understood from being under the sea. Do 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 do. What else?
Sebastian Flounder. So I think that's
You read
another
my
detail
mind. That was
that we should
literally the
probably
next thing I
talk
thought of.
about. uh, Sebastian, I did not mind as much as I thought I would.
Their designs, I thought, were bad.
They do look very weird.
Oh yeah,
Flounder, I think, is way toned down. Like he is not as much a part of this movie, barely at all. They may as well have
yeah,
just cut him from the film.
yeah. I would agree. And like I said in the car, he looks much more like tilapia. He is a very skinny mini fish.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's what he's supposed to look like. I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. What does a
I'm
flounder look
sure
like?
it is.
Flounder. Yeah, flounders are supposed to be very skinny but also big, like big as in like tall. Think of like a dinner plate. They kind of look like that, I
Well,
suppose.
so,
Not maybe not as round, but definitely not as fat as the cartoon version.
but here's the thing. We know these characters already.
Mhm.
Again, it's that thing where they're trying to take certain things and when they transition to live action, they're trying to make it look real as if it was in our living world, but some things they don't. And it that disconnect kind of clashes in my mind. Maybe not everybody else, maybe I'm a weirdo, but things like that pull me out of the film.
Well, they pulled so many of his lines, I feel like. Like he wasn't even as much of a character in the film just in general.
Yeah.
But Sebastian, I feel like he was pretty decent. He looked a little funny, and it was kind of weird how the fact that he could swim pretty much as fast as Ariel. That seemed a little out of place. I don't really remember seeing him swim before, at least not like that, because usually he kind of like scurries across the surface or something, like what you would imagine a crab would do. But his character and personality and the amount of time he had in the film, that I think felt more appropriate, at least compared to Flounder.
Gotcha. Did you have any others?
I mean, we kind of already talked about Scuttle, and I know they changed it from a guy to a girl for the bird, and it looks kind of different. It didn't bug me as much as I thought it would. Just it, personally, I don't like change. I have a hard time dealing with change just in general with like literally anything. So when I saw that they gender swapped it, I thought this was going to be trash. But it turned out to be all right. I really didn't like that Scuttlebutt song, but aside from that, I felt like Scuttle was an okay character. It was all right.
And I mean, I guess to elaborate a little bit on the gender swap thing, it's not because oh now it's a girl that it's awful kind of a thing. It's a was it necessary, I
Right.
suppose.
Yeah.
Um, especially with it being a CGI, like a purely CGI character.
Yeah. One cool thing that they added to Scuttle's character that I don't really remember before is that Scuttle is the character now who actually gives Ariel the dinglehopper, the fork. And so she's, telling her that what it's for is that you basically like twist your hair in it. So now you have this cool new hairdo, which she later tries to do in the market. And everybody looks at her like she's a total weirdo because they gave her the fork to eat food. So I thought that was kind of a neat add-on to just have an extra scene with Scuttle that was different but good, I guess.
I feel like that was the same, but I guess I actually I don't remember. It's just a feeling.
Maybe I don't remember it. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I thought it was nice.
So probably the one thing that we haven't really talked about is how did we feel about Halle Bailey? Um, honestly, I thought she did fine. She does have pipes. Like I do think when she's singing some of those iconic songs, I think she holds her own. But again, it's kind of like the scene I was talking about, like the one that's behind me, is like a perfect representation of how Disney with the instruments wasn't supporting her as a singer. So like when we see the commercials and she does the part of your world song, it is like fire coming out of, her singing voice. Like it is amazing. But when this scene happens and she is at a 10, the splash is way down here and the music behind her is also the same level as that splash. It takes away from her performance almost in a way because she's like pulling the weight of the song. She's the one that's uh doing a good job and the rest of the people aren't. And so I think that hurts her performance in a way. But ultimately, I would say that she did a very good job. Um, I really don't have anything bad to say about what she did.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned earlier, I think some of her singing was a bit awkward. She had some really good singing, but then she had some really kind of awkward singing, and I think she struggled with the changing from singing to talking and making it seem fluid and not forced, and it made it kind of sound awkward to me. But there was a lot of good singing too, and in terms of acting skills, I thought she did fine.
Yeah. Yep. So I would say, yeah, she did a great job with the movie overall. Again, the things that, and they could even be the things that you just mentioned. A lot of those things could be from the writers. I think that's something that us as audiences sometimes forget, especially with Star Wars and you people that hated on Hayden Christensen. It's in the writing a lot of the times, and it's like, these actors are told what to do, they do what they're asked, and then sometimes what comes out on, in the theaters is just due to terrible writing. So maybe she was told to even do it the way that she did it, and that's the way that Disney wanted it, and it just didn't translate to audiences as much as they wanted. So could be her, could be the writers. these days, a lot of times I like to attest it to Disney themselves, just because I know some of the things that are going on with Star Wars. Um, but yeah, that's my opinion. Anything else? I'm trying to think. I one thing. I keep saying one thing as if there's only one thing left in this thing. Um, the ending is very different from what we got in the animated movie. They are not out on a boat for the party, and then Ursula shows up. Um, they're actually like in the. It's not a castle, but it's where Eric lives, the palace. We'll call it Palace on Land. They're having this like dinner party. You know, Vanessa's there. They think that that's the girl that he's supposed to be with. And all of this happens at the building. So, you know, things go crazy. The Ariel runs out of time, so she jumps in the water. I believe Eric goes with her, and she goes to find her. Or Ursula follows behind her as well.
Ursula pulls her into the water.
Oh, she pulls her in the water. I thought it was
It
Eric.
was a you took my voice back, which you weren't supposed to, from Ursula's point of view. Ariel took the voice back. Ursula got mad. The two were about to kiss, but it was sunset and they just barely didn't have enough time. So Ariel grows her fins back instead of having legs. And Ursula's like, "That's it. You're my servant now because that's the deal was if you didn't get the kiss in time, now you're going to work for me." So she basically takes her and lunges into the water with her.
And then uses her as leverage to get the trident from uh
King
King
Triton.
Trident. Yeah. So, and then, Ursula becomes huge like she does in the animated show, and they use this shipwreck to raise out of the water like the Flying Dutchman from Pirates of the Caribbean, and then they use that one to stab Ursula and destroy her. So, like I said, it's different than the original, but it's all right, I guess.
It was another one of those times when it was just so dark it was hard to see. So
Yes.
can we go into final thoughts? You're not ready for that yet.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
All right. Final thoughts. Movie was all right. There was a lot of changes that were good and a lot of changes that were not so great. Overall, I think it was okay. But the biggest thing that I have for overall is just that it was so freaking dark. I could hardly see for, I'm gonna go as far as saying 60 to 70% of the movie. You could barely see what was going on. It was bad. If they could change the lighting so that I could actually be able to watch the movie, that would make a huge difference and really raise how I'm feeling about this movie.
It's
But that's
interesting too because I heard when they released the trailer the first time, they got a lot of feedback that the trailer was too dark, so they lightened up the movie a little bit. Well, clearly they didn't do enough.
yep.
Was there anything else you were trying to say?
I know that wraps it up for me.
All right. I thought the movie was good. Like Sarah said, there were some good changes, some not so good in our opinions. That is our thoughts on The Little Mermaid. We do movie discussions way more often this year than we have in the past. So if you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We do our best to do them fairly often. Like we're doing these, I think, almost at least every other week, if not every week. So we'll have tons of these videos out for you. Drops a like if you liked the video, and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the new live action version of The Little Mermaid. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.